All right. I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Good morning, all. This is Earthbound Live with Jeanne M. from
Right.
because I can't get the M and the N in the right order in her last name. And we are talking about terraphilia and many other things. Jeanne is, if, I'm sure all of you know, is the creator of RX Nature on Substack, which is a fabulous online newsletter. She is also the founder of Greenbird Nature Therapy, which is based in the Blue Ridge Mountains of South Carolina, a beautiful, beautiful area. And for more than a decade, she's been taking individuals and groups into nature with Earth as her, as she calls it, co-therapist. And that's a thing I want to talk about. In 2019, she earned a certificate in clinical ecotherapy from the Earth Body Institute in California. And I love this. Each equinox and solstice, she leads a group on a silent hike on woodland trails. And in her private practice, Jeanne combines mindfulness and earth-based interventions. So she's an earth-based Buddhist to give her clients embodied experiences that are therapeutic, safe, and evidence-based. And those latter two are super, super important because a lot of people who are enthusiastic about vitamin N and nature exposure forget that we also have to be safe and we also have to pay attention to what evidence tells us actually works. So, good morning and welcome, Jeanne. So thrilled to have this conversation with you. We're going to
Yeah.
start with, what does terraphilia mean to you? Terraphilia. I know I don't speak Latin.
Well, let's see. First, Susan, I want to thank you for that term because it comes from you, I know, and your husband. And I mean, it's just brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant that in paraphilia, in 5 syllables, right? You encapsulated what so many of us feel, which is exactly what the word means, just love for the earth, for this planet that, this terra firma that we inhabit and live on. And it's all we have, as the astronauts told us last week.
Oh, wasn't that fabulous? Oh my gosh.
Best part, tell us what they're seeing and how it's affecting them emotionally to look down on
Hmm.
the earth. Um, but terraphilia means to me that we are in relation with the earth. We are not separate from, I mean, all nature will say this over and over, but I don't think we can hear it enough that we are part of all of these ecosystems that intertwine on this planet. We're not the boss. We're not the
Yeah.
overseer. We are just part of this great milieu of life. And how can we not love that? It's
Yeah.
it's us and it's everything else. So um and the other, I guess one other thing for me about terraphilia is that I really like to emphasize with my clients and with people that I take into nature that hopefully they're going to see this as a reciprocal relationship that,
Yes.
we are not just like, oh, it's wonderful to go into nature and I get back from calms me
Yeah.
down, but but we need to give back. We need to, in some way, return that love.
Yes.
And there's a million ways to do that, of course. Um, so many wonderful ways to help the earth, but we really, I want to encourage and inspire people to be conscientious and to express terraphilia by giving back.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
not really a relationship if you just take.
right.
And and living in Colorado as I do, we have a huge presence of what I would call the recreation nation, which is mountain biking and kayaking and hiking and backpacking and every other ing you can think of that involves being outside and taking from nature. And I honor that people want to be outside and they want to go fast and they want to climb mountains and they want to run gnarly rivers and they want to, careen over sandstone ledges on their mountain bikes. And I always say to my friends who do that, and so why don't you come volunteer doing this or look for a volunteer opportunity doing that? Maintain the trails that you ride. Work on join the annual river cleanup on the rivers that you run. Do that kind of thing. Advocate for those lands. And lots of them do, but so many just take. And then it's not a relationship or it's not
Ah,
a lasting relationship. It's not really a heart soul relationship.
Yeah,
So that's a great point.
very true.
That reciprocal thing, and of course, that's a big part of Braving Sweetgrass, Robin Wall Kimmerer's fabulous book that so many of us just took to heart and went, "Oh, this is just what we needed to hear." That reciprocal relationship, however you reciprocate. The next thing I want to go to is the whole idea of how did you get involved with nature? Where did your relationship with nature start? Were you one of those kids who was outside all the time? What what got you going?
Okay. Well, it's a story that's partly sad, but partly
Yeah,
wonderful. Got me to where I am right now. But I had an eye injury when I was a toddler, when I was only 2, and lost the sight in my right eye.
yeah.
And I was also the youngest in my family. My brothers were 10 and 11 years older than I.
So
So
they're way older.
when they left home, I was about 7, 8, 9, and grew up as an only child, really, and, also had this disfigured eye, so very shy, very few friends. So my friends were out in the woods behind my
Yeah,
house, and I spent hours and hours. Thank goodness my parents let me do this, right? I mean,
yeah,
within sight of the house, but
yeah,
spent so much time out there just, I don't know, really, just wandering, I suppose, exploring, and I would build tiny little micro villages, take acorns and sticks and little tiny pebbles and create little villages out of that. All this sort of creative play that
yeah,
is in short supply nowadays, sadly, but, I think that's where it started. I think that I really felt, um, soothed and comforted and companioned in
yeah.
nature. Yeah.
Companioned. Yeah. And you've written about that eye injury and how it affected your life. You
Yes.
have a memoir.
Yeah.
You want to show us the cover
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
people who don't know it?
Of course. How convenient. The book, it's, let me see, I'll take it.
Go up. There you go. Yeah. Good Eye,
Uh,
Bad Eye, which is such an amazing title. So,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
isn't it interesting that by being othered inadvertently by this accident, by being othered, what you turned to for companionship was outdoors, was the wilder, wider world beyond
Oh,
humans.
very true. And, now when I work with clients in nature, we talk a lot about how, beings are not othered in nature. There might be, a bird with part of its wing, or there might be a tree that has been broken and has some.
Mhm.
There's no such thing as ugly in nature. There's no such thing as deformed. There's
Yeah,
just, beings are the way they are, the way
yeah,
they evolved in their life experience. So there is no othering out there, uh, and that really helps with people who have gone through trauma, who
right,
othered by their something in their life experience. We can go into nature and say, this tree is recovering. This tree is
right.
finding its way. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that's a there as a botanist, I will say there is othering, but it's not in the same way that humans do it. If you are a plant whose flowers for some reason have polyploidy, too many genes. Leah just made a great comment that I'm going to bring in just a minute. Thank you, Leah. Um, in fact, in so many healthy forest, trees actively nourish those with less, and that is true. The marvelous research that Suzanne Simard in British Columbia did showing the underground network of fungi that connects trees and other plants in forests and between species. Her and her entire universe of students who she is so fabulous about crediting in all of her work, her students and colleagues, they have shown that the nodes in those underground networks actually will actively distribute nutrients to the less healthy trees and even keep alive trees who have been logged if they are in particular, the node trees that tend to be the big old trees in the Pacific Northwest forest. And those networks will actively route energy, water, nutrients, the chemicals of communication to those cut trees to keep them alive for as long as possible, which is pretty fascinating. You're keeping the root system alive, which is a big part of the tree, which we don't see because we're walking on the surface of the earth. But there is othering. If you are say, a flower that's looking for bees to pollinate you, and you have polyploidy, multiple sets of genes, and you don't produce a flower that looks like the others of your kind, bees may not visit you. So there is othering, but it's a very different sort of othering. It's not a complete rejection. It's just a lack of pattern recognition. Um, if
Mm.
you are a bird, if you are, say, a red-winged blackbird male with those, the wing with the yellow and red stripes on them, and you don't get the nutrition that you need, and you can't produce the feather structures that absorb red, no, that reflect red and yellow pigments, a female may not mate with you.
Oh,
So there, there are those individuals whose life paths diverge, but what there isn't in the same way is societal shunning.
mm. Judgment. Yeah.
And that's what we do as humans. I have seen crowds of crows stoning a cat, but that's a predator-prey relationship. So that's a defensiveness. That's very different. It's not exactly like bombing Tehran, but it's pretty terrifying to watch. Um, so we want to be careful not to idolize nature.
Mhm.
But there are all these fabulous examples of the tree that's broken in half and continues to grow,
Mhm.
you know, and no one is saying to that tree, "Oh my God, you're defective. I can't be in the same forest with you." That's the difference. It's the judgment thing, which I think is fascinating. So,
Right.
all right. Sorry, I go down the rabbit hole of
Science,
biology too easily.
because the science is so amazing, and you have such a deep knowledge of it.
Well,
Uh,
I am like you. I wasn't a child who had a traumatic injury at 2. I didn't lose the sight in one of my eyes. But I was an other growing up, because my family was eccentric and nature study was our thing. We didn't have a car. We had a tradesman's van converted into a homemade camper way before RVs were cool. My dad biked to work, which was not done in the suburb I grew up in. You were supposed to have 2 cars in the driveway, not a dad on an old bike biking 5 miles to work every morning, and a mom getting on the bus to go to her job as a librarian. Um, so I was an other in that way. So nature for me was company. And partly for me, like you, I was not an only child. I have a brother who's 2 years older. We were sort of the perfect white, middle class, urban, post war family. 2 parents of opposite sexes, 2 children, boy first, 2 years later, a girl. And that was where the normality ended. It was right there. That was all. So I grew up, my parents were both only children. We had no cousins, no aunts and uncles, none of that stuff. So nature was my family. So I totally get that kind of wandering outside and finding a community feeling.
wow.
Um,
Welcome. Yeah.
so,
Mhm.
um, and when you, so I guess I want to follow up on a couple of things that come from your bio. What set you as a therapist to going toward ecotherapy? What aimed your path that way? Was it always an interest or
Strangely, no. Given my background and my love of nature and the outdoors and gardening and, botany, when I started the counseling health was my second career. I was a journalist first.
oh, that's right, I'd forgotten that. I should have known that. Yeah, I love that.
And generalist, that's actually how my gardening started. When I was 40, I went to, the newspaper sent me to England to cover the Chelsea Flower Show.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. wasn't that interested in gardening. I took my mom. It was the year she was turned 80 and I turned 40. And so we celebrated and went together. Um, and I was just blown away, of course. I mean, English gardens are so just heart fulfilling, it's just beautiful. And so I became a gardener at that point. But when I moved into counseling, into psychotherapy, I just had a very traditional practice, and I had an office indoors in an old Victorian house, and then COVID came about
Oh,
a few years into that, and I had to give up the office. We couldn't see people in person,
right.
so I started seeing people online like this, virtually, and then somehow I came across that training program in California for ecotherapy, and I thought, "What the heck is ecotherapy?" I mean,
Mhm.
I thought it was something like wilderness, you know,
Right.
training for wayward teenage boys or something.
Yeah.
I found out ecotherapy was this totally emerging field of
Yeah.
anywhere else, and just became fascinated with the idea that I could rope in nature as a healing force
Right.
within the therapy. Meanwhile, somebody else, actually, I have her book right here. Um, there was a therapist, I think this woman is in, I don't know, I think she's up north in New Jersey, maybe, but it's called Walk and Talk Therapy.
Mm,
So that happened around, I think this book came out, well, it's 2023, but I heard about walk and talk therapy back in the teens, back in
mhm.
probably 2015 or something. So there were already people who were doing that. Then I had this client. I don't know if you want this much of a story, but I had this young man come to me. He had a traumatic brain injury, car accident. He was seeing a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist knew that I specialized in mindfulness interventions. And he sent this young man to me to see if mindfulness could help his memory and his cognitive functioning.
Yeah.
I think he was about 30, and this accident had happened when he was a teen. I tried to teach this young man mindfulness, and we tried to do it, and he was very, very amenable and very cooperative, but he couldn't retain it. He couldn't retain it.
Right.
So one day, this was still when I was in my indoor office. One day, I said, "Let's go for a walk." And he was, what the heck? So I took him outside, and we walked around the block. This was in sort of an urban area, but there were houses and trees and green living things. And the sun was shining and the birds were singing and the breeze was blowing. And so I got him involved in all the sensory aspects of
Mm,
yours in a natural, at least semi-natural setting. And then he got it. Then he got the mindfulness. He was able to kind of hook into it. And I just went, "Oh my God."
yeah.
This is what I could do with people. And then COVID came and I had to give up the office. So then I thought, well, okay, I think my new office is going to be outdoors. It's going to be many different offices, different places,
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
hiking. And, it's not for every client, not
No.
everyone people outside, but my clients who love it really love it.
Yeah.
They want you disappointed if I'm like, no, I'm not doing outdoor sessions today. We're going to have to do it online. Oh, it's really sad.
I love it. Well, I'm sure you've read all the research about what vitamin N, nature exposure, does for your brain. And I think the thing that's most striking to me, and this comes from my personal experience with 2.25 years of living with someone with my late husband with terminal brain cancer, is watching outside, both hemispheres working together. There's something about being outside in nature that actually causes that corpus callosum to become kind of a superhighway, the connector between the two hemispheres. It's like that becomes a superhighway and things suddenly start exchanging. The logical, rational side of you suddenly starts talking to the relational,
Mhm.
um, language meaning making side of your brain. And it integrates the whole thing. And there's this whole frontal lobe stuff that happens that you probably know better than I do about executive decision making and impulse control and all that. But I remember with with Richard, my late, um, he had a tumor in his right his glioblastoma started in his right temporal lobe, which of course is visual processing and language and spatial connections. He used to get lost going between our house and the post office 6 blocks away, a walk that he'd walked for 15 years. Um,
Mm.
but and there were no turns. Um, but he would make a turn. But I'd take him outside, and the guy who would get so ticked off quickly once his tumor progressed through more areas of his right hemisphere would calm down. It was like so much of his brain, even after the melon baller had gone in, he had 5 craniotomies. So they opened the plate on the side of his head and scooped out more brain 5 times.
Oh,
Well, actually 4 times, 1 time was just draining. But, so he lost a good bit of he lost as much of his right hemisphere as they could take out safely, and then it was all over. Um, and as his neurosurgeon liked to say, the wonderful Dr. Bregas, she said to me one time, "Susan, you really do need all of your brain. It does adapt to loss, but you really do need all of it." I was like, "Oh, yeah, so that's why it's not working as well?" But I would take him outside and things would work better again. There
mhm.
is something about being immersed in a real environment with sensory stimuli, intellectual stimuli, all of that happening at once that causes your brain to work, to
Yeah.
integrate, I would say. And you can probably say it better than I do because you work with this all the time. But I was so struck by that.
Yeah, what a story. Goodness. I'm glad you had that as a resource, both of you, you know?
Yeah,
And
me too.
oh,
I might not have survived his journey with glioblastoma
oh,
if we hadn't, if we hadn't had a place we could just get outside. And if he wasn't amenable to that, even when I had to push him in a wheelchair, that was therapy for both of us. Um,
medicine.
so
Yeah, and then there
anyway,
you know about the phytoncides?
no,
You know, phytoncides are, I babble about these all the time. They're my favorite thing. They are a organic compound,
oh,
like oil that trees are emitting.
right, all plants do. Yeah.
All plant right, all green things. Um, for their purpose, it's keeping away, parasites and insects and viruses and things that would not be welcome for them. But when we humans and then they get airborne, and so when
Yes.
humans walk into a forest and breathe in these compounds, that sort of connects with our NK killer cells that target tumor.
Oh.
So it's like a well, it's sometimes called nature's antidote because it is
Hmm.
it's helping our immune system be even more effective in terms of fending off invaders. So it's another gift.
That's interesting. Um, I'm going to put that in a little context because phytochemicals, which is what they're most commonly called, PHYTO chemicals, are part of. So plants are chemical factories. They make all sorts of organic chemical compounds for various reasons. And phytochemicals, the ones that you're talking about that they diffuse through the air and also through the soil, are their molecules of communication as we now understand it. They are literally the vocabulary trees use to communicate with. So they use them to repel predators, grazers, and all the, from tiny thrips to deer and elk. They also use them to warn other community members that a grazer attack is happening, and plants that take in those phytochemicals then produce enzymes within their tissues within 30 minutes that make them less edible. Um, the phytochemicals say, my roots are running out of water. Can you send me some through the fungal network? I mean, there's just all these there's dozens and dozens of phytochemicals that plants make and diffuse through the air to communicate with each other. So I didn't know the human end of what happens when we inhale them, but that's really interesting that at least some of them affect us in that way. I have a story about phytochemicals from my end. I live in sagebrush country. I don't live in a forest. I'm a sagebrush girl, and I have all my life been drawn to this one particular shrub, which is the most common shrub in the North American West, particularly the inland West. And it has a particular characteristic scent that you either love or hate. Um, its phytochemicals, the three most common ones that our noses pick up are camphorine, which think Vicks Vapor Rub, camphor, um, jasminine, jasmine flowers, and limonene, which would be lemon flowers. So it's a very medicinal with a sweet undertone kind of smell. And I've loved it all my life. I've been drawn to sagebrush country my entire life. I first recognized that sagebrush denotes the landscape of my home in the West when I was in grade school. And I've spent my entire life studying it, this shrub, and haven't been able to figure out, studying the research and everything, why I'm drawn to it until it's one of my favorite stories. My father was an organic chemist. He developed drugs for a living. I'm allergic to all the drugs he developed because I don't do well with pharmaceuticals. So there's an irony there. But my dad had been dead a few years when I was writing something about sagebrush, and I asked out loud, just sitting in my office, I just said to the air out loud, "Dad, what is it about sagebrush?" I do talk to my dead parents. Um, and his face appeared in my mind very clearly. The face he used to give me when I was flunking chemistry because it didn't make any sense to me. I'm an outdoors person, I'm not a lab person. And the chemistry he loved didn't make sense to me. And he just had that smile of patience on his face that he used to have when I was trying to not get a D in chemistry. Um, he looked at me and he said one word. He said terpenes. And I went, terpenes? And he said yes. And he was gone. And I was like, okay. So I went to Dr. Google and Googled monoterpenes. And it turns out those are the phytochemicals that sagebrush produces that our noses can smell, that I'm totally in love with. And those three primary ones are camphorine, jasminine, and limonene. And together they are lung openers. I've had lung issues my entire life. I've had breathing issues my entire life because I have lupus. I breathe better when I can breathe in sagebrush's phytochemicals.
Yeah.
And I was talking to my doctor of Oriental medicine about this the other day. I was telling him that story, and he looked at me and he said, Susan, you can go 30 days without food. You can live 30 days without food before you expire. You can live 5 to 7 days without water before you will die. You can live 5 minutes without breathing.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, that's why I'm so drawn to sagebrush. I can breathe when I'm around sagebrush. So they're super, super powerful, but we have very little research about that. And I'm fascinated that you have found some of the really interesting research about how they affect our immune systems.
I just love that story though, because it's concrete and biological, but it's also, it's of the heart. I mean, it's
Oh,
the
yeah.
heart you have with the
Yeah.
plant really helps you be healthy and be able to breathe. It's
Yeah.
it's a beautiful combination of heart, body, and uh, all the factors are there. That's lovely.
I think that's what you're doing with your co-therapy with nature is you're taking people outside where they can feel the
Mm,
connection we have, or they can feel the bond we have and the reasons for it. Whether it's our mental health, or our physical health, or both, our emotional health, our spiritual health. When you take people outside and you let nature work with you to help them heal, you are doing it both with words, which are important. They're how we communicate, but you're showing them by letting it happen.
mhm.
And I
Yeah,
think that's the revolution that COVID brought to you by getting you out of your office. Not that, as you say, nature therapy works for everybody, but for who it does, it's so powerful. That's what led me to this idea of terraphilia and the whole, okay, my mission in life is now reconnecting us with nature. So,
you
um,
did. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Sagebrush.
yeah, Leo, that was just so crazy. I talk to my I talk to my beloved dead, I really do, but they don't usually appear in my brain and answer like that.
Very specific, clear message there.
Oh, yeah, yeah, he was like, I think kinda at the end of his patience with me, like, "Would you just get this, please?"
Look, yeah, it's very interesting to me when I take people into a natural area for a session, and normally with any session, there's sort of this word vomiting that happens at the beginning. Here's all the horrible things that happened this week, and blah, 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 and I will sort of let that spin out,
Yeah,
10, 15 minutes, maybe even if it's a big thing. Um, and then I'll just ask someone to pause and, either direct their attention to something around us or just let them look around and say, what calls your attention? And
mm,
I mean, I can literally see the sort of, the dropping of the shoulders and the softening of the face. And there's a big exhale where the parasympathetic is getting engaged. And,
right,
and I that's why the earth is my co-therapist because she engages there and starts helping the process.
yeah,
Foment. Yeah.
right.
I'm just
That's
stand I'm just like, "Oh, this is nice." It's wonderful.
Well, you also have to, bring them back to integrating that experience. And
Right.
that brings me to, since we're actually at time, a little past time, um, that brings me to a question for you, which is there some small thing you can offer people as a tool for practicing their teraphilia wherever they are every day? Is there
Oh,
some favorite technique or favorite tool?
yes, yes, lovely question. There's so many, but,
I'm gonna
yeah,
make you pick one.
uh, I I I'm gonna do a talk this evening to the Tennessee Valley chapter of Wild Ones, which is a national biodiversity, nonprofit, but, I would say, um it's hard to pick. Um, well, let me talk about mandala,
Okay.
earth. Okay, let's just do that one. And I do this with groups and I do it with individuals and it's either way it's a lovely experience, but the ancient symbol of a mandala, a circular repeating
Hmm.
sort of, I think everyone pretty much knows what that term means. Um, but it's just the process of finding natural objects in a place and arranging them in a beautiful pleasing pattern. So
Mm,
there's so many aspects to that, your brain and your nervous system enjoys the patterning and the repetition
right.
proven thing. And then you just have this sensory experience of looking at, textures and touching the things, feeling them, sniffing,
Mhm.
and then creating this work of art. And then the final, piece de resistance is that you look at this beautiful thing of art you've created and you know that nature's gonna reclaim it. You know
Right.
it wiped out by rain or wind or whatever. So there's impermanence, there's the beauty
Right.
of nature that you've created and it's right there. So that's one of the loveliest practices that I do with people. I just I can't get it's always new, it's always fun.
Well, because what you find to make the mandala with is always new.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's a great everyday teraphilia practice is, and no, I don't mean you have to do it every day, but that's a really great one that's accessible to all of us wherever we live is go outside, find yourself whatever small natural objects you can find and make yourself a mandala and focus on the textures and the smells and the sounds and make yourself this beautiful circle and then let it be. Let this creation go. I want to note one comment. David Richmond says creosote bush does it for me, but then I grew up in Yuma County, Arizona, and that's another one that's a very medicinal smell. I lived in the Chihuahuan Desert, which is how I know David, for 7 years, and the smell of creosote bush is very, very. The name creosote exemplifies the main fragrance, the main phytochemical in it. So that's another one that's very evocative. You can't not know creosote bush if you live in those deserts. Okay, I want you to first, because we really are running out of time here. I want to know, Jeanne, first, is that talk that you just mentioned for Wild Ones, is that available to anyone to sign on to? Is it a
Yeah.
Zoom talk?
Yeah, yeah, it's open to the public. It's at 6 Eastern Time tonight, so that would be 3 for you all on the West Coast. Gonna be about 45 an hour.
And that is through the Tennessee chapter of Wild Ones? How would they find it?
Yes,
Or would they just look on RX Nature, and is it in one of your recent posts?
it is. If they have
Yeah,
ac or they can Google, Tennessee Valley Wild
Tennessee Valley Wild Ones. Yeah, okay. That's good.
page. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
cool.
link is right there. It's free, it's open to anyone. I would love for people to come, yes.
That's great. Um, Jeanne, thank you so much. What a delight. It's just, we could talk on forever. And since I promised these would be half an hour, I feel some obligation to not go way over that. Um, but yeah, again, Jeanne is the creator of RX Nature on Substack, for those of you who are on Substack. And you can find her writing there. Her memoir is Good Eye, Bad Eye, or Bad Eye, Good Eye. Did I
Good
get that backwards? Good Eye, Bad Eye. Um, and she also has a website. Is it, what's your website?
It's my
Or
name,
it's just
Brenda.
your name, Jeanne Malmgren. I swear, the
You
Norwegian in me cannot get that name.
they that anyone can access it by greenbirdnaturetherapy.com.
Yeah, I was gonna say she lives on this wonderful acreage in the Blue Ridge, in South Carolina, called Greenbird Nature Therapy, and it's called Greenbird Nature Therapy because, very briefly.
I live in and I should have said this in the beginning, sorry. To honor the Cherokee people whose this was their native land thousands of years, and
Mhm,
the valley is called Eastatoe, which is a Cherokee word meaning place of the green bird. The Carolina parakeet, which is now
mhm,
it was the only native parrot in North America,
mhm.
um, lived in this valley, cooperatively with the Cherokee, so,
Wow,
green bird.
that's that's such a great story. That's a great story. And I will just say briefly that, again, I'm Susan Tweit, and this is Earthbound Live, and the next Earthbound Live is, I believe, May 20th, with Carolyn Crane of Whimsy Farm and Whimsy Farm Podcast. And a replay of this conversation, if you joined late, will be on my website, be on my newsletter Thursday, and then Jeanne will probably put it on hers after that. Yes?
Yeah,
And thank you all for joining. Thanks for the comments. Thank you, Jeanne, for the conversation.
thank you, it was lovely. Thank
All
you.
right. Bye bye.